What's going on, Workforce? Brian and Chris here today, and we're actually talking about our excitement for patch 6.1, especially as it relates to the job adjustments. Also, we might even touch on PvP job adjustments if you guys haven't seen our PvP video. Brian and the Clown. Brian's the Clown, Chris is the Hairman, and we're having a good time here today. But one of the core points is that we talked about in that update, in that video, is how many people seem to be really actually excited about PvP. The number of times I've seen people say, I've never been interested in PvP. And then that's all of a sudden they're like actually interested in 14's PvP. I was like, this is great. This is going to be exciting. So that's what today's video is going to be about. It's going to be about these job adjustments. What stood out to us the most? What are we most excited about to see? Chris, have you been nerfed to the ground, or are you feeling pretty confident in your job selection with these changes? And just so from a visual representation, we can actually highlight any specific changes that we want. Did you feel like Warrior, since that is essentially your kind of main? How do you feel about these changes overall? And then what else stood out to you the most?
The tank stance across the board going from 10 seconds to 3 seconds, I think, is an improvement for tanks. Dark Knight got a massive adjustment in the way Living Dead works.
Massive, especially because you pair Dark Knight now like with a benediction from White Mage, and you still get that window. So if you get hit by double death or something of that nature, you're actually protected. It's a whole extra window of survivability, let alone with you.
That's huge.
1500 potency.
It's a massive adjustment.
It's a gift to your healer. Here's the thing I don't know, and I'm gonna obviously want to test out. Be like, yo, healer, let's test this out. Is that enough to actually, like, with your actions and things like that, to fully heal you up? Or is that just a massive gift to Sage and Scholar and, like everybody who doesn't have if they have all their cooldowns spent trying to keep you alive? Is this just a gift to help make it easy to get you back up without having to have the tank die anyway?
Yeah, I think so. Like, as a warrior, that's really how I feel. As I'm looking at Dark Knight, Infuriate got cleaned up a little bit. So
talk to me about that, because I'm still leveling Warrior. Warrior is coming up on like 92, I think, for me, or sorry, 82. I broke the level cap and y'all didn't know.
I believe the way it works right now is when I use inner release, like, I can burn those charges by using other abilities by accident.
Okay, yeah.
And so this says I'm going to grant you inner strength, likely as like a stack or something, and that's going to be consumed on Fellcleaves and Decimates exclusively.
Yeah, okay.
And so it's going to protect you a little bit more from, like, people who played perfectly. I don't know that this actually changes the job.
No. If you were playing it flawlessly, this is raising the floor.
I think this just cleans up people who make a mistake, especially when things get crazy, right? Like, sitting on a dummy and doing things perfectly is very different than when, like, a pull has gone sideways. The thing that I've skipped past there is overpower.
Yeah, I want to know
your
your
beginning of Shadowbringers. Do you remember when they added tank stance and I got mad and said they are going to homogenize all tanks?
I do remember.
Make them all the same freaking thing.
I remember all the comments telling you that you were an idiot. No
personality. And then they came through and they said, you know what? We need to really clean up their invulns so that they're also all a little more capable going into Endwalker. And I was again like, that's great. This feels like homogenizing. They said, and everybody needs to have the same gap closer. And everybody needs to have the same ranged attack, and that's not going to interrupt combos. And that's all going to get homogenized. And I said, that's fine, because in dungeons, I can still have to aim my cone. And so my warrior feels different than when I play on other tanks. I like the cone. It really only affects me in dungeons. And it means that I have to kind of position and I have to target a little differently. And like a big Castrum pull, which will never happen again. But like those big pulls like that, there's a couple like Amnesis and Niter or whatever, where you can pull big. You've got to kind of swing around. And it's a wide cone. It's like, it's fine. It's fine. Especially if you back up to max melee.
Yeah.
But no, they all have to be circles now. Everybody has to be the same. Like, I guess the big advantage to tanks not being homogenized for casual play is that now my glamours can update in sanctuaries. Is that what we're doing? Because like it's not with the abilities. Like, we're just slowly grinding these into being the same thing. I'm really disappointed in the overpower change.
Be sure to smash that like button if you disagree with Chris on this change, and also smash that like button if you agree with Chris. We'll take either or. What's weird about this, though, is like from a conal perspective, is that they're following up combo ability was an AoE. So there's a conal position and an AoE position. So making and taking warrior and putting it straight up into that just AoE. They also did it with several other abilities too. So this isn't just targeting the tanks. It's other abilities that we've seen across the board that have basically, in terms of, I get what you're saying. This is definitely what is a raising of the floor in terms of the casual gameplay. Yes. And so if you're, like what identity does warrior have versus Dark Knight versus, and they're becoming, I think, fewer and far between, especially with like all these changes they made. And the question is that ultimately, is that a good thing? And the concern is that what happens when they add a fifth tank or sixth? So we are not going to worry about that for now. But this, I felt like, was just in line with the fact that their combo was already a circle. So it's the only tank that had a conal. I would be more impressed if they said Gunbreakers, is actually a conal as well. So then you would have two conal style tanks versus the AoEs.
The cone, and then make sure you grab the far side with your circle, and then you're trying to drag it through the dungeon to keep things moving. There was this movement that the way I moved as a warrior was just different.
So the moving on to other tanks though, sticking with the theme, like Gunbreaker got nothing. It's like, your tank stance. You're good. But when we look at Paladin and Gladiator and Dark Knight in terms of sustain, Paladin, like you see here with Confiteor, Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, Blade of Valor, Cure. That's the each of these is a potency Cure 1 being applied to these abilities, taking these all in at 1600 potency for that combo. And I think that helps bring it up more in line with the warrior. And in terms of our differences, Dark Knight only really gets their increased sustain when they use and when they actually go into Walking Dead. That means they have to have been quote unquote killed in order to get this 1500 per action potency. So it's that from a sustain like that's going to make, like, if a Dark Knight hits the floor and Living Dead is like on not used, like that's a skill that you need to make sure Dark Knights are absolutely using, because that's insane. That's amazing cure potency. For Paladin, I think this is like, along with Clemency, which no longer interrupts combo actions. Like so many like no longer interrupts combo actions are insane. But then you see here and like it's like that's a lot. That's much more increased sustain as a part of their rotation, especially because you don't need to have this built off of Confiteor. You can, if necessary, go right into it from Requisite. So in terms of the combo, go ahead.
I don't know enough about why this was needed. So all these balance changes had ultimate in mind, right? These were locked in because ultimate's in mind. It's in 2 weeks. Like, these were locked in so that they could play test ultimate. I don't know why. So like, my understanding is that Paladin was the other tank that had soloed Pandemonium turn 1 normal, is that Warrior and Paladin had both soloed it.
Okay.
And so I guess I don't understand where the self-sustain is needed. I haven't spent that much time in Savage. I've cleared the first couple bosses, and I've progressed about half of P3, and then my personal life went crazy and I flew around the world. So like, I really haven't seen why this is needed. It definitely feels defensive in nature. I just don't know where it's coming from. I think personality wise is like, if anybody who's first getting into Savage, that for everything is fine in dungeons. Everything is fine in dungeons. So we're talking about like first extremes, first Savages, because the top end players are just going to adjust. They're fine. If they don't change anything, they'll deal with it. If they do change stuff, they'll deal with it. So it's that middle group, the ones that are swinging across. How does this open doors for them? I think the tank stance change is big. And I think there is more sustain here. I just, it does encourage you to, and it does encourage you, like, you should have already been doing this, but it encourages you to Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, Blade of Out. Like, you should be doing that. But I'm sure there are people who, like, they miss that last one, right? Mm-hmm. They get up to like a pretty big sword and then they stop. And it's like, no, keep going. You want the really big sword.
But the other key here though is that this actually bypasses the need to be able to do Confiteor before going into this, because you can trigger this off of Requisite. So if you are in danger and you need healing, you can say Requisite, Blade of Faith, Blade of Truth, Blade of Valor. It gives you a pathway to get right into that. And obviously you're gonna the cost is damage, but when it comes down to like critical healing, the biggest damage loss would be you hitting the ground, you know, in that regard. So this is going to help. And honestly, I think it's going to take some pressure off the healers, especially when teamed up, because Warrior felt like it was just already a healer. That's been the meme since 6.0. And rather than bringing Warrior down, it looks like they're just kind of trying to adjust and bring everybody up. And you're right with the ultimate thing. Now within the Dark Knight, like one of the things that I really like is Stalwart Soul going to level 40 that was previously 72. The other thing, Blood Weapon stacking up 5 stacks and going from 15 seconds. But even though we're getting a Flood of Darkness overall nerf, like I'm very happy with what I'm seeing here in Dark Knight. I wish we didn't have this at all because I do love Flood of Darkness, but I'll get over it in that regard.
You're still going to use it.
I'm still going to use it. Yeah, absolutely. But it's so like oh man, it just feels good. Like Dark Knight has so much damage output potential that it's like I don't want it to be, you know, like the easy, like, oh yeah, the Dark Knight's clearly the winner because it's got the best damage and it's got the best sustain, and that's not necessarily what it is. But that in and of itself for Living Dead, I think this is a really massive change for that. What I see here in terms of jump and high jump, this seems like a button bloat issue. Like I've actually macroed these with before. This seems like I can get rid of those macros and thus just make it to where jump is actually now changes to Mirage Dive when under the effect of Mirage Dive ready. I was like, that's huge. Go ahead.
So, I mean, so you skipped past Monk, and honestly, it looks like the devs did too. And what it is they said that that would be in 6.2. They named a couple of jobs and said, like, we're not going to be able to get everything in 6.1. Because you got to keep in mind, like, this is feedback from Savage, and they had to wait for the Savage feedback, and then this had to be in with enough time that they could still play test it to be sure that the changes didn't break Ultimate.
Right.
And so it so pencils down came a little early. And so some things did slide to 6.2. So do not be shocked if your job, even if it was adjusted here, does get adjusted in 6.2. We're going to get another round of job adjustments. Some may not need it. But like Monk obviously pushed all of its changes out, which it got a massive change with 6.0. So I think there was a lot to process there with like, how do people feel about the new Monk? You know what? Let's just give it a minute and we'll deal with it for 6.2. The general theme across all the patch notes, action animation has been shortened. Insert spell X is now available earlier to new players and further back in level syncing. That's just a general rule. Ninja here got a neat change. So Trick Attack now affects, it buffs the damage you do to the target by 10%.
Yes.
And then because you've lost your ability to nerf the enemy by 5%, they've gone ahead and put that on Mug. And Mug has just been a underutilized skill.
Yeah.
And
120-second cooldown on Mug. So it's like this in and of itself, I think, is going to make obviously Mug more valuable. And people are naturally frustrated that Trick Attack no longer has that increased party damage taken. But the fact that you still have it as a ninja, and I think this is also raising that floor because you're not having to worry about going invisible using Trick Attack, setting yourself up for that, though it's still valuable because now it's still benefiting you and your damage. So it's really
cool down on Trick Attack.
Trick Attack, I think it was it's all about Viz. I think it's 60 seconds, but I don't have the numbers in front of me.
So this pushes their window. So I'm sure Savage players are doing math on how the DPS windows line up now, because it's going to shift their alignment with everybody else.
Everything typically is going to be in that 30, 60, 90 or 120, with some exceptions where you will see a 180 out there, but typically within kind of a 2-minute span, generally speaking, kind of for these various different windows. Overall, though, then you go look at all their numbers, just like they said, to account for some of these changes, buffs across the board, with the exception of like potency increase from Bakurava here from kind of a 50-point nerf, but overall just kind of buff. Same kind of system with Samurai that they talked about.
A long section.
Samurai is massive in terms of its section because what you end up seeing is that you see a lot of potency changes, but you see that attack now guarantees a critical hit that we talked about prior and that they kind of showed off, but they are losing one of their abilities that essentially is kind of making up for that. So you'll see some big nerfs here. 1350 to 800 for Nakamori. It's guaranteed crit, which is nice. So that's kind of an evening out. But I think all of this is going to come down to how it feels, because if it feel like, I think people are going to feel like it does do more damage. But looking at these notes, not necessarily. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is great. So they're trying to bring it up more in line in that regard.
Less RNG. I was listening to Svea was talking about Black Mage, and for certain encounters, he was talking about pulling crit off of his gear because there were phases where he has like a target priority that he has to do, and he needs to know how many casts it's going to take to kill a particular ad. And so while it lowers this theoretical max damage dealt during the entire fight, it increases the reliability that pull after pull he delivers on the task he's set to do. And so I think RNG at a certain point, RNG feels really fun when it feels like it rewards you, but like there's another side to that coin. So too much RNG,
you're like,
does sometimes feel like, okay, we should pull that out. In the Fizz ranged, Archer's fine. Machinist is obviously the big winner. Now they've been crying the loudest, and so like they've needed that.
Yeah.
They, you know, there have been machinist mains that have been like, I just need like an across the board potency adjustment. Done. You got buffs. You got buffs everywhere. And then Dancer feels like it's continuing off the 6.0 changes.
Right. So you have like it's the dance steps moving into weapon skills.
Cleaner.
So that's going to be pretty, I think ultimately going to feel a lot cleaner. But then you see this Silken Symmetry and Flourishing Symmetry, which if you look at the note, you can still get Flourishing Symmetry and Flourishing Flow from the Flourish action, but they're adding in this Silken Symmetry, which essentially I think is going to give you more opportunity to be able to execute these other, you know, like obviously these steps and stuff like that.
More. Yeah. And so Bard is a lesser version of Dancer there.
Right.
So I skipped Bard because we hate Bards, but I like that there was a button there that's different. Action now changes to
so that's a beautiful button reduction. I wish we saw more button reductions across the board, like just kind of bring it like, yeah, I use this, but then it really can also then it uses this to proc that. Summoner got a lot of that this last 6.0, which is really clean. It keeps my hotbars nice and clean, but I've seen a couple of those and that was actually really exciting to see.
I don't want a one button rotation, but I don't want another button that only has a use every 120 seconds. And then I've got two abilities that are each only used like rarely.
Right.
They should, and never at the same time.
Right.
Like, they should share a
I'm
location.
not summoning Bahamut and Phoenix at the same time.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, that's perfect. Now, across the board for Ruby. This is Ruby. All buff, like massive buffs. Now, 3 seconds in terms of its cast time. Not massive in terms of that, but you're seeing big potency increases. I think that's going to help increase that damage phase overall. Searing Light, like they showed, is going to actually be cast from you, so you can the summoner can actually cast this whenever, not when just Carby's out. So you can kind of time your windows a little bit differently with that. But overall,
Carby needs to be careful. Carby's going to lose a job.
They already did. Like that's why I was
Carby's,
like, I'm surprised that
slowly.
I was hoping to see Carby's auto attack is now back in turn. Like, you know, I would have been fine with that. I would love to see what that looks like. Red Mage, like only the animation for displacement has been shortened in that regards. Across the board, this is where I was like, holy crap! White Mage, big winner. MP cost reductions. White Mage, if you guys haven't seen and me talk about it when I'm playing it, is the only healer that I felt the pinch of MP. Meaning I am always using Lucid. Like you cannot miss the Lucid window. And one of the earlier notes is that Lucid's actually coming earlier in the levels. And now with this MP reduction, I was like, this is fantastic. This is excellent. And you could see a big boost to Affluous Misery here, going from 900 to 1240 in terms of your damage. I was like, this is great. Literally the bell can be procced whenever you like. You can choose to use it rather than wait for it to expend all of its action or time out. I think that's
10 yalms.
Yeah,
arrows,
everything.
30 seconds, so you're not constantly
right at the beginning. Well, especially like when you get synced. That was always the thing of like because at some point you had a trait that turned it into a 30 second, and it's like, oh, now it's synced. Oh, it's 18 seconds. It's so annoying. So I'm actually very pleased with that. Scholar, I didn't really feel too much, just a slight MP reduction. I really haven't felt too much on Scholar in terms of MP management, but I was like, all right.
That sprint, that 20-second sprint was broken. That is a long sprint. You can sprint an entire phase.
But also the damage, doesn't that also reduce your damage reduction as well?
It's a massive reduction there to cut that in half.
Combust also takes the same effective area, going from 18 to 30 seconds overall. Sage, if you look at this is what stood out to me. Solterra, emergency, the effect potency increases from 50 to 70% and actually grants 4 stacks of that. So you can so it's not a window, it's just whenever you use those attacks like that. I think that's a really nice change. Overall going to increase that output potency for whenever you're doing damage, and you're not penalized if you accidentally place it and don't end up, oh no, I got to stop doing damage and start attacking. So I think that's actually a really nice change overall. This is also a big change right here.
I think making things available earlier is my favorite thing I've seen across these. There's not very many of them, but I think a couple making the jobs feel a little better. And I think the way you do that is you don't want to overpower people low level, so you pull that potency out and then you add it back through a trait, either that ability or something else around the same level range that it was originally added. So I've been seeing some trait walker stuff there that's kind of continued, which has been really nice.
I'm gonna kind of take us also now into a little bit of the PvP changes. Now, if you guys want some details, you can pull like the job guide's got all kinds of details. Stay tuned. I think I'll be putting together guides for this. We're gonna be playing PvP tomorrow. I'm really excited about that. I'm taking a little bit of time off work to just play some PvP during the day, probably also at night. The excitement around this is just general, but you can see here, these are group actions. These are essentially shared by everybody. Guard, Yoshi P showed this off, reduces damage taken by 90%. And then essentially all kind of your debuffs. It does cut down your movement speed, but here's something very visually interesting. Attacking a target with active guard, where guard is not active, like visually representing like, hey, they're guarding, like you're getting that damage cut, like maybe shift targets. So I was like, that just UI change along with guard. And
I wish it was another color.
Actually, I would agree with that. I think that probably would stand out a little bit more. Like, why is it blue? Like
just think about how fast we're moving, right? You're swinging around.
I'm attacking. You got to make sure you take a look at what information's coming back to you. Standard issue elixir, restore your HP and MP and HP and MP maximum. Purify, obviously remove stun, grants resilience, etc. Blah blah blah. Sprint and cruise.
Elixir's massive.
Oh, and when you again, like if we just go ahead,
wasn't it before just a partial heal? Was it all the way?
Oh, it was part. But like if we go in here just to the PvP job overview, let me just pick on Y Mage because everybody gets their own limit break now within that. But then you can see
that's just the adrenaline change. They're just no longer calling it adrenaline to confuse people. It's now called limit break.
So for the standard issue elixir, it's gonna take you 4.5 seconds to use. It's got a 5-second recast.
Before?
You didn't have it. Like there wasn't a full heal. Because
it had the potions.
Yeah, you had potions, and you had a charge. You had a charge action with that. But this is a full heal, and then again recast. It's going to take almost 5 seconds to use. It's going to have a 5-second recast. Recuperate instant 1 second. It's going to use 2,500 MP. Restores your own like MP, purify, guard, etc. So you can see what that's listed here, and then you can go into like the White Mage limit break. I'm having a blast, kind of trying to read through this today. So getting ready for tomorrow. Make sure I'm like, all right.
No role restrictions. One of each job is like only one of each job on a team, right? 5v5 crystal conflict. So as you look through this, maybe you have more than one job picked if you want to play with different friends throughout the day, because if you guys are both black mages, somebody's going to need to switch.
I wonder if that's going to also apply to custom games that I don't think that probably I shouldn't.
Yeah, but I want those series rewards.
Yeah,
I want to finish out my Garo stuff.
Oh, 100%. And so that's also going on right now. So guys, if you want to dive into that, I'll be putting some thoughts into controller guides for PvP alone.
I already put a crystalline conflict guide up that we're just self-promoting here in the middle.
Yeah, guys, check out this guide. It's already up.
Started guides up.
Ready to rock and roll. So it's going to be, I think I'm really excited by these changes with these jobs. I didn't feel like there was anything that I felt bummed about, which is kind of nice. But that's not to say that that if you're feeling bummed about some of these changes, that you're wrong. I just go look at them like, yeah, this is great. Like my plan honestly, like I think yours is running a spoiler-free stream the rest of the week. Like, I don't think I'm going to step into the story or into the new raid until like later this week.
I want to do the Alliance raid as fast as possible. It is locked behind quest ? If that is for some reason MSQ, I'll do all my MSQ first. Mm-hmm. If it's not, I'll do my MSQ first thing Monday morning. Next week.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, do you have any final thoughts? If not, you want to take us out in this video? Because we want to talk about your ARR experience.
Yeah, I started in Waking Sands here, and I had to switch to Mists of the Realm because I thought we were going to talk about ARR first. I did finish ARR, so hopefully you guys are enjoying 6.1. Remember that 6.15 is in 2 months, 1 week. I'd put that at August 19th as my guess. That could shift a little. And that will be the big bulk of content. Ultimate starts 2 weeks from now. And then 6.18 is not set to a specific date. That'll be data center visit. And then in August, we'll be looking at 6.2, which has a whole bunch more stuff. I saw people asking about Criterion dungeons and all of that. And so I think that's the right math, right?
Well, so I would say June for 6.15, and then July for 6.18. That would be my
6.2
would be August. Yeah, you said August for 6.15. I was like,
sorry, 6.2. I missed those.
6.2
because I saw people asking about Criterion dungeons and things like that, which are not here yet, but will be, and we'll get more Pandemonium and stuff at that point. So lots coming this way. Good to see everybody back. Hopefully you enjoyed your time away playing Elden Ring, and we will be here covering everything as it happens. Follow us over on Gaming Kinda and Ginger Prime. Where you putting all your Final Fantasy stuff now?
Ginger J RPG is where that's all gonna live for the guides and news and things like that. So yeah, and then Ginger Prime is like my big editorial videos and things that I like to put a lot of time in. That it's like, oh, I'm gonna invest more time into those, try to make them more interesting, entertaining. But lots of fun stuff going on in that world. Thanks guys so much for your time. We're gonna go talk about ARR and Chris's interpretation of it, especially as kind of a veteran playing it for the first time. See you in that video. Take care.